From Sky News, check this out. Biden faces pivotal moment as he weighs retaliation for soldier deaths in Jordan drone strike. The commander-in-chief will have given a number of options by the Pentagon, but the consequences are far from certain and could trigger a wider war. Sky News says, as early as tonight, President Joe Biden will authorize U.S. military action in the Middle East. It is likely to be one of the most consequential decisions of his presidency. At stake, the credibility of American deterrence and the teetering stability of the region. This comes after 3 U.S. troops were killed in a drone attack and 34 were injured. CNN reports that, we'll read. 3 U.S. Army soldiers were killed and more than 30 service members were injured in a drone attack overnight on a small U.S. outpost in Jordan, U.S. officials told CNN, marking the first time U.S. troops have been killed by enemy fire in the Middle East since the beginning of the Gaza war. We shall respond, President Joe Biden said while speaking in South Carolina on Sunday. The killing of 3 Americans at Tower 22 in Jordan near the border with Syria is a significant escalation of an already precarious situation in the Middle East. Officials said the drone was fired by Iran-backed militants and appeared to come from Syria. It is still being determined which militia group specifically is responsible. And of course, we're already seeing the warmongers in Washington, D.C. say, strike Iran now, with the reporting that Joe Biden will be authorizing some form of retaliation tonight. Many are speculating this could kick off World War III. I think it's fair to state that the problem we have here and the difficulty with this kind of commentary is that you have dozens of world leaders saying either World War III is starting, has already started, or is about to start. Then you have constant tit for tat escalations and we just don't know. I mean, we're in the thick of it. We can't tell. We can't see the forest. We're inside of it. This could be the shot heard around the world moment, but I don't think we would know until well into any kind of actual war. I do believe, however, if Joe Biden does order any kind of retaliation on Iran directly, then it's fine. I think it's fair to say at that point, everything's going to kick off dominoes one after another. So if there is an action taken against Iran in some capacity, and then this ropes in the other countries in the BRICS nations, we may 6 months down the line be like, okay, we're in World War III. History books will look back and say that moment Joe Biden ordered retaliation kicked things off. I got to be honest. I'd actually think that October 7th may be considered the start. If World War III kicks off, you can ignore Ukraine. People will say, well, there were border conflicts happening and there was funding of war in Ukraine, Afghanistan collapse and things like that. October 7th was a massive escalation, which results in the Houthi rebels shutting down, the Red Sea, basically shutting down shipping, which is now leading to a dramatic escalation. At some point, Venezuela could make a move on Guyana. China makes a move on Taiwan. There you go, World War III.
Yeah, it's definitely tense geopolitically. I mean, that's the funny thing about the Ukraine conflict, which is that for a while when this was happening, when Russia was stationing troops along the border, everyone was like, we're on the brink of something, And they did shut down trade, and there are all kinds of sanctions against Russia. And ultimately, we just started to learn to live with this conflict. I mean, of course, the U.S. government is paying billions of dollars to support Ukraine, and the American taxpayers are feeling the effect of that at home. But ultimately, it doesn't seem like that was enough to spark World War III. This does seem like more of a tension-building moment. But maybe we'll feel differently in 6 months.
People like Lindsey Graham, they've been wanting Iran forever. They want us inside Iran. They want to slide on in, occupy that space and just take it.
Is that why we have a small contingency in Jordan? Are they bait for the warmongers?
Well, the other thing, too, is that Intercept is reporting we've got troops in Yemen. This is a White House report saying we did. And then in January said, actually, no, we don't. We're not sure there's any troops there. There's been a secret war in Yemen going on for like a decade. The U.S. has been supplying weapons, even under Trump. This has been ongoing. The question is, when does it come to a point where Russia, China, or any BRICS nation, for instance, just finally says, yeah, no, it's full scale, it's mobilization.
And would they, right? Like, who's going to be the first to admit that we're in war? I feel like no country wants to be the one to say, like, this is it.
I think if we make it to the far future, they're going to have a hard time quantifying World War III as separated from World War II and World War I. They're going to look at this all as like one long sustained time of violence that's been going on for maybe decades.
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, sort of. But World War I, before World War I, there was the war starts because of the tensions.
But then World War II is kind of born out of consequences from that. I mean,
exactly. But look, we call World War I and World War II separate, despite the fact that it's all basically the same conflict.
But then I'm thinking, like, past that, we've been kind of doing these weird psyops on each other through, the internet and causing all this turmoil, whether they're people claiming it's rigged elections and whatnot. I think they might add those to the idea of what the war has looked like, because we've entered this new digital space where the war is on like the digital battlefront, the physical battlefront. We're seeing it escalate now in the way we think of war in the old school ways, but I think it's been going on kind of psychologically.
Well, that makes me think
years.
of like TikTok, right? I mean, when TikTok rolled out, everyone realized what kind of connection it had to the Chinese government. It was sort of this question of, what warfare is being played, even though we are not actively at war. There is always an effort to have influence over another nation. I don't think that ever went away.
No. I have proof that TikTok is war. They banned Pop Culture Crisis.
I thought you were going to say because they created Dylan Mulvaney, but that's also true.
So we have there's another show at timcast.com, Pop Culture Crisis, hosted by Brett Dasovic and Mary Morgan. Guests on Friday. It's very similar to Timcast IRL in its structure: super chats, commentary, stories, podcasts live every Monday through Friday, 3 to 5, and it's not a big political show. It's talking about like, oh, hey, this new movie came out, this new video game. The point was to be able to have some way that we could talk about pop culture issues in this company when we're mostly talking about news. TikTok banned them.
What was the reason?
Community guidelines violations. I call shenanigans. I think the real issue is controlling influence of an adversary, making sure that the work we do can't expand. Timcast IRL got banned from TikTok a while ago, and then for no real reason given. They don't want us to be able to have influence because the narrative and the message that we share is good for the United States. And the narrative and message that's on TikTok, Dylan Mulvaney, for instance, is destroying the future generations.
I got banned from TikTok right after I posted a video of me on InfoWars. And I think Alex's voice just like trips a wire on TikTok, and it was like immediately gone. And I was like, I don't even care. I don't even like TikTok like that. It was fun sharing videos of me on InfoWars, but it was immediate.
But TikTok has such an influence on culture right now. I mean, this is what happened after the October 7th conflict broke out. This was one of the things that came up, that the conversation that was happening between mainstream media, or maybe even on, let's say, Instagram, was different from the conversation that was happening among younger Gen Z on TikTok. The difference between the position on being, pro-Israel versus being pro-Palestine became obvious on social media more than anywhere else. I mean, it was social media and college campuses that really led people to believe that, oh, wait, they have conflicting opinions here. We didn't expect it.
Yeah.
Are you on TikTok?
No, I banned myself from TikTok.
Me too. I never got on.
The moment it came into existence.
Fair play.
Well, good. Yeah. But it is still highly influential. Did you guys see that Florida is proposing like banning social media for anyone under 16?
With parental consent, right? There's a couple states that are considering laws like this.
So a kid can go on if the parents consent to it, or what?
You have to have parental consent if you're a minor, if you're under 18.
Just like if a kid wants to go to an adult bookstore, he just needs parental consent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember which state. I'll look it up in a second. But one of them, you can't just say, "Oh yeah, my parents said it was okay." They have to like sign a document and send it into the company, which I find interesting. But again, to your point, the challenges that this generation is facing in terms of trying to understand the challenges that face their young generation are very different than the parents who came out of World War I or the parents who came out of World War II. And I think so much of that has to do with the digital age. I mean, we always see that during times of threat, like after 9/11, theoretically, this was a point where a lot of people enlisted in the military, and there was a sort of spike in patriotism. But that goes away. People have their own questions about the government's actions. This generation has seen so much tension and conflict. And in fact, the fact that they're always plugged in, they're always seeing clips of awful things all the time. Could you inspire them to come together? I don't think you can.
So you're saying that social media created the perfect candidates for drone operators?
Maybe, or just the perfect candidates to be disengaged because they are ultimately overstimulated by everything they see.
I think it created a generation of broken-brained people.
Well, that's what the biggest danger is. As my children became teenagers, and of course I could watch on my iPhone what apps they were downloading, and my 14-year-old son downloads Snapchat. Oh, heck no. That comes off now. Yep. You take it off or I take the phone instantly.
Yeah, Snapchat's creepy.
Well, it was creepy, but look, those guys on his baseball team, they're sharing photos, pictures, and it would be incredibly easy for them to make that fatal mistake, and they're branded as a sexual predator for the rest of their life.
Yeah, there have been instances where teenagers share photos of themselves, and it doesn't matter. Law doesn't say you or anyone else. Like the law just says a photo of a minor. Done.
That's it.
And so they've had like 14-year-old boys and girls have to register as sex offenders because they took pictures of themselves and shared it, but that's the law says.
Or there's been a couple cases where people will connect with them, effectively catfish them. They'll send like a nude photo or whatever, and then they'll blackmail them and say like, we have this, we're going to ruin your life. There was I think a kid from Minnesota who killed himself over this. I mean, this
Right.
is like a new danger that I think parents have never had to contend with because they're basically inviting strangers into their home constantly through the cell phone.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.